Nothing changes instantaneously. In a gradually heating bathtub, you'd be boiled to death before you knew it. Our Father, who art in heaven. Seriously? What the actual fuck?
Gilead doesn't care about children. Gilead cares about power.
Why does healing have to be the only goal? Why can't we be as furious as we feel?
For whatever man sows, so shall he reap.
Welcome to Above the Garage.
Hi, friends. Welcome to our analysis of Season 4, Episode 3 of The Handmaid's Tale, which is entitled The Crossing. Let's do our round of introductions and dive in.
Hi, I'm Claudia.
Hi, I'm Marigold.
Hi, I'm Rachel.
Hi, I'm Violet.
And I'm Kate. So, notably, the preview ended with Nick saying, "I'm trying to keep you alive." And the episode opens with June muzzled and chained inside an I-van. And there's a chain connecting like even her neck to the wall, and aerial shots of driving to this huge compound surrounded by woods. And we've never seen the Eyes compound before, right?
No.
Okay. Because it's cool to see. The garage opens and the van descends, and she can see armed guardians in the garage through a slat in the van. All of their transportation has nice little slats for visual aids. And June's terrified until the van doors open, and Nick comes into focus as he walks around the van in his commander suit, and he sighs and he sits beside her looking like completely devastated and starts to like really gently unchain her. And she seems to lean her head into his touch, closing her eyes and like feeling it when he does that. Then as he moves to the floor to unlock her legs, he transmits a lot of information to her in his Nick way. Mrs. Keyes is safe in custody. The other handmaids are still at large. They moved on to the next safe house. That's what they assume. And you can really tell Lizzie's directing here because there's so much focus on Nick's like face and features.
Yeah.
I think she said once, like, "I want you guys to see what I see," which is lovely. It's adorable. But he's looking like really deeply into her eyes as he pleads with her. "If you don't tell me where she is, I can't help you. Please let me help you." And she looks straight back into his eyes and shakes her head slightly. And they both know she's not giving up her friends. But then we hear people advancing, and June looks over and sees Aunt Lydia leading two guardians, faces totally covered by masks. And suddenly June looks at Nick like truly scared. Aunt Lydia seems to have finally succeeded at producing sheer terror in June. She thanks Nick and assures him she is here as off Joseph's guardian angel. Bullshit. He looks like he wants to cry, but he meets June's eyes and then looks back at Lydia and does that other thing he does where he speaks words to someone else that are clearly meant for June. And it's a Bible verse, Nick style also. "Be strong with the Lord and in the strength of his might," he says as he looks into her eyes. And it's such an intense moment between them. But it's just like fascinating how much they express between each other with their eyes, the strength that he's trying to provide her. I assume you guys have comments on that.
Oh yeah. I mean, like
the list.
Lizzie, like her mouth and her nose are covered, so like all of her acting is with her eyes. It's super impressive that you can like see all of her emotions on her face from just her eyes.
Yeah. And there are so many. It's not just, she doesn't just have one emotion. She's going through a lot and you see it all, and it's really fascinating. And I can watch it 100 times and it's still like, wow, it's like you can see the transitions from one into the others.
It's wild. I don't know how she does it.
I think that's also one of the reasons why the shots of Nick directly from her point of view are so like impactful in the scene too, because like she's doing all of her acting with her eyes. So then you're seeing exactly what she's seeing, like you said before. It's just very like the angles are really direct on their faces. Do you know what I mean? Like rather than being slightly to the side, it's like a direct thing where you're looking right into their eyes. Just interesting that they shot it that way, I think.
Yeah, I love it.
Yeah.
And didn't somebody say something about like him looking into the camera, like almost looking into the camera? Like that was like a notable thing because June does that.
He is, definitely.
I think I have heard that, yes.
Yeah.
The last thing she heard about him was from the Swiss and from Serena. That's been in her head possibly this whole time. And now the first thing that happens when he sees her again is he's arresting her. But he probably volunteered for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's what my headcanon has been, that he was the one who wanted to be the one to get her so that he could be in control. And
because she would have picked up the gun otherwise.
Exactly.
Sure.
Yeah.
I wondered why Aunt Lydia is suddenly so calm with her when she approaches the van, because the last time we saw her was in front of the council, and she said she wants her to die, basically.
And the next time we see her, she's crazy too. Like when she gets her in the room alone.
Yeah, but there's a whole up and down with her, but she doesn't seem to really want her to end up dead.
Yeah,
I think, and it starts right here, and I was totally confused because I was really like, now she's here, is she going to die, or what's happening? I mean, of course, I knew that Nick wouldn't lead her to a death.
Right.
Yeah.
He surely
I think
knew.
she just wanted to punish her, I think.
Yeah.
I also wanted to point out that with Nick being in control and what are the options that he actually has, because he seems to get criticism for this episode because he doesn't just save her or he doesn't just get her out, and thinking that because he's a commander, he's all powerful maybe, and that he has that type of authority, but or that he even has the ability to do that. But I've never seen it that way. I don't think it's that easy. No. And he is actually, as a commander, I think he's under more scrutiny than he was when he was a driver. I think he had a lot more freedom back then. He could maybe be a little bit sneakier behind the scenes and stuff, but as a commander, he literally has eyes on him all the time. So he can't just, he has to be sure he can trust any of those men if he acts out of line or, in defiance of Gilead in front of them. So he also can't make it look like he's being lenient with her, because that would also tip them off that there's something, he would be, showing his hand. He has nothing but bad options in front of him, and he's navigating through the bad options, the best of the bad options.
Right.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And he's begging her to let him keep her alive. It's like
he's like, I can't help you unless you tell me. He doesn't want to send her in there to be tortured. He would much rather her, tell him where the handmaids are and let's just stop this right now. But she's not going to do that.
But I also appreciate that he knows her well enough that he's gonna beg her, sir, but he also knows she's not gonna give up her friends, and that's kind of cool.
This is actually a thing that he already did back in season 1, episode 3. Because he told her basically the same there. She should just tell them the truth so she doesn't get hurt. And it's kind of funny that this dynamic was already there back when they started to get to know each other. And it's still at the same understanding even after all this time. It just got better and closer, and
they get each other.
Yeah, and I had a backwards parallel too, for the globe for 2-2, because it kind of felt like when Nick gives her the gun and the keys and lets her make the decision what she's going to do, kind of reminded me of this episode too, when he gives her the verse and he's kind of he wants her to make the choice, but he's like, you have to. Here's a verse about strength, but please don't do what you're about to do, kind of,
Yeah.
So it's like he's giving her something while also saying but please don't.
Yeah.
And the rest of that verse is really interesting because it's actually about fighting the dark. I'll just read the version that I have here. In conclusion, be strong, not in yourselves, but in the Lord and the power of his boundless resource. Put on God's complete armor so that you can successfully resist all the devil's methods of attack. For our fight is not against physical enemy, it is against organizations and powers that are spiritual. We're up against unseen power that controls this dark world and spiritual agents from the very headquarters of evil. Therefore, you must wear the whole armor of God that you may be able to resist evil in its day of power, and that even when you've fought to a standstill, you may still stand your ground. Take your stand then with the truth as your belt, righteousness as your breastplate, the gospel of peace firmly on your feet, salvation as your helmet, and in your hand the sword of the Spirit, the word of God. Above all, be sure you take faith as your shield, for it can quench every burning missile the enemy hurls at you. Pray at all times with every kind of spiritual power, keeping alert and persistent as you pray for all Christ's men and women. But it's talking about fighting against evil, and that's what Gilead is. Yeah. Especially the very headquarters of evil, as she's in the eyes.
The eye compound, which looks crazy, by the way. I wrote that down. That was it looks like they've really. It's the same kind of thing as when you go to DC and you see oh, whoa, the world has gotten really crazy outside of Boston, outside of just these commanders' houses. You see big things like this giant eye compound that they've built, and it looks so futuristic and crazy, and
I thought it was really cool.
It's just jarring to see that.
I thought it's a real Tower of Terror.
Yeah. Appreciate that.
I heard that like it's an actual place, but I think they CGI'd like it to look even more like scary,
Sinister.
Yeah.
larger.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
It definitely looks like a place that a horror movie would be in, which is what this
Yeah.
entire episode feels like.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
It does.
I just have one more note on Aunt Lydia because I just remembered again that she's basically trying to soothe Nick with her words, like saying, I'm with her now. You can go. I make sure nothing too bad happens to her. And I was watching the first time. I was like, huh? What does she know? What? How?
Yes. She's so complicated in this episode. I have a hard time keeping up with.
Yeah, definitely. I also had just a note thinking this is kind of like a little bit going back to the verse again, but it almost felt to me like Nick was encouraging June to like be strong enough to give it up in a way. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, because for her, I think that's harder. Like, it's harder for her she can take the physical pain, like we said before. Like, she'll take the torture. She'll just keep letting it hurt her to the point of killing her. I don't know. I think that he did mean it the way that we're saying, like, be strong because it's going to be like pretty fucked up. But I also kind of wondered if there was another meaning of like, be strong enough to stay where they are and to save yourself.
Yeah. I think I like the other version better myself. I think I like it better too. That he's like, I know you're stubborn, like, and I know what you're going to do. So just be strong. And I'm trying to give you strength. But yeah, definitely he wants to give it up. So it could definitely go either way. There's no question that he wants her to give it up.
I just thought it was interesting to just think about, I don't know, how it could mean both things at the same time, sort of. But yeah, I agree. I like the other way better. I'm
sure he means both and hopes for your version. Then they walk June down a hall with lots of red lighting, and the guardians throw her into an empty cell. And when they shut the door, Aunt Lydia just lets loose on her. She's screaming and hitting her. You wicked, wicked girl, all those children taken from their homes. Did you think about their poor parents? Did you think about how I would feel? You've caused so much pain. I hope you're happy with yourself. And that's with nobody in the room. So that's not like performative. That's her actual anger that she's feeling towards June. And it's so funny to me how she could ever possibly think June gives a fuck how Lydia is going to be affected by her actions. But she really seems to be like upset that she wasn't thinking about her. Like, what the Jesus Christ, everyone is so delusional in this world.
Oh my God.
It's so hard to watch.
I think Lydia thought that June would think of her too, or should think of her too, because they kind of bonded in season 3, especially when they went to Washington. So maybe Lydia really thought that June and her had kind of formed a bit of a more friendshipy way, and that's why it's really bothering her more than usual that June did something that would affect her too. I mean, she really paid for June getting the kids out. So, 19 days she looked really
Did you guys notice that there's a red stripe on June's uniform? Do you think it's because she's a handmaid?
I'm 100% sure that
they
have a color code in the prisoner uniforms. So.
This is like the next thing that's coming up, I think, when the lieutenant comes into the room, right?
Yeah.
That guy is the creepiest freaking villain.
Oh, yeah.
Holy shit.
Oh, my God.
Oh, my God. Yes, I have a lot of notes on him.
He reminded me of like an uncle type, but like whoever the actor was, I don't know his name, but he played that part so well.
Oh, yeah.
I guess he's like a Gilead uncle. He's like the aunt, but a male version of an aunt, kind of.
Yeah.
I don't know, but seriously, I go, if there was like an entire series based on like Lieutenant Stans as the villain, like it would be like the creepiest thing I've ever seen.
Truly. So is that his name, Lieutenant? I only heard Lieutenant, but I never heard it was Stans. Okay. The way he is like completely sadistic, he's a total psychopath. He seems to truly enjoy the pain he's inflicting, which makes him perfect for the job that he's in. But also at the same time, he's oddly fair, because as soon as she reveals anything, even though the first time, I'm getting ahead of myself, but it was a lie, he stops. Exactly. He stops immediately what he's doing. He says, okay, let's get you some dry clothes and a place to stay or whatever.
But I kind of think it's actually more sadistic that he rewards her the second she says something. Like, to me, that's almost even like creepier, because he's basically like, he's showing her it's manipulation. He's showing her that he's going to give her small comforts if she'll say the things that she's supposed to say. And like the whole way that he like touches her face, and sweetheart, and everything, like it just it's so sickening. And it makes like the dichotomy of like the sweetness and then him just like even that like strike where he just punches her in the ribs while she's like laying down, and it's so sudden, it's like a snake. And then he just goes back to like, oh sweetheart, are you okay? And it's just like, oh, like I felt like my brain was melting, like I was going slightly insane, like trying to like watch him do all of that. So I think honestly I would prefer somebody who was just slapping me around because I would understand it. This guy just seems like so crazy that it's like you can't even understand him as a human being. He's like an alien.
I think at the compound, that guy is the boss, and he's like coming in for the hard cases.
Does Aunt Lydia have any say in what happens to her?
No, surely not, because
so.
I mean, later on you see that she's sickened by some of that. So I don't think she has any. She's just watching over her because she's the aunt that should
in charge of her.
Yeah, be in charge of her, exactly.
And the guy that plays that is Reed Birney. Anyway, amazing at that role.
Yeah.
Totally psychopathic.
I thought of more of a exorcist type guy that does everything to get the evil spirits out of you in the worst ways possible.
Yeah, he played that part really well. And like this character made me like think about in real life how all the psychopaths probably just like love Gilead, because like this is their opportunity to like inflict pain on others, sanctioned by the government. I don't know, it's just terrifying. I was like, oh, there's so many psychopaths in this world, unfortunately. And they had them.
We're seeing them more and more. It's
I mean,
scary.
They set the scene up so well because when June is brought in, you can hear the torture of everybody else in the hallway, and you can see some people, and it's like you already know what to expect, and then this sweet nice guy comes in, and then he's like one hell of a creepy bastard.
Yes.
And also before he is let loose on her, I feel like Lydia, this is the first scene that confused me about Lydia, because I feel like she was kind of trying to communicate with her eyes to June that like she's got to tell him or it's going to be bad. Like there was a whole moment between them when she said, while God's merciful light still shines on you, tell them, and
when he starts to do the drowning, or I don't know how it's called, waterboarding, exactly. She went out of the room and she actually wanted to leave, but then she hears June struggling, and she's like, okay, now I stay right here because I don't know what. It looks like she was like
kind of going through it with her.
My girl needs me, I should stay with her. I don't know, it was like a completely
sounds like something she would think. Also, I think my impression was he punched her in the gunshot wound.
Yeah, I think so.
So
oh shit, okay,
that would really really hurt.
Painful.
Yeah, I definitely think that's where he punched her.
That's exactly,
but he couldn't have known, right? Because nobody of them knows that she was shot there.
I feel like they probably knew.
They probably knew.
They must have because she was in the new outfit.
She was in her
she's been changed.
Oh, you're right.
Yeah, and then after he does that, he like psychotically apologizes as if he just accidentally tripped her on the street and asks again, "Are you sure you have no answers for me?" And then Lydia, it's kind of funny to me in this episode when she keeps being called off Joseph, because I was like, what the fuck? Oh, she's still Lawrence's handmaid.
Yes.
I've lost all track of her belonging to Lawrence.
I mean, that's a really good question though, because like, what do they call them between commanders? You know what I'm saying?
I guess
I know. I wondered that too. Like at the Red Center, do they go by their name?
Yeah. They got by their names.
Yeah, they did.
But if they go back to the Red Center, isn't that like when they want them to give up their names at that point for good?
Yeah, I think that immediately you'd be stripped of your name and given, a number or some dumb shit.
Maybe they do.
I don't know, but
it didn't seem like that.
But like, it's a big deal when they give each other the names in the marketplace. It also is a little confusing in this episode because it looks like they give each other their names at the end at the Red Center when they're talking.
Yeah.
Whatever it is, offing. But it's interesting. I'd like to know.
Maybe that's just Lydia again, because she thinks she has that special bond with her girls, and every time she's back there, maybe that's why because sometimes she calls her June.
She uses it manipulatively, yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah,
She
right.
does.
Totally.
Same with Janine, right.
Mhm.
Anyway, yes, so then they pray over her and commence the waterboarding upon a cloth with a cross on it. And this episode is called The Crossing, and it's full of crosses. Also, I'm no religious expert, sadly, but I remembered after Jesus was crucified, a soldier stabs him in the side and blood and water pour out. And for some reason, this episode just reminded me of that story from my childhood.
Yeah, totally. At the end, when June is showering, you see like a mark on her back that's bleeding.
The wound
So it's
opened
very
up.
similar. That's true. That's a really good
Yeah.
point.
And yeah, and Lydia at least has the decency to look upset by the torture she's hearing. Quite the complicated character, that one.
With the Lydia doing her cross stitch too, because
Yeah.
it's like later on when Lawrence talks about like the window dressings of Gilead, it just felt like the dichotomy of like the torture and then
cross stitch
proper
outside the door.
cross stitching. Yeah, I liked.
That's a good point.
And this show does so good at like incorporating its title like 6
many
times.
things.
And I never noticed that until we started doing this podcast. That's so cool.
Yeah, this episode especially has a lot. Then Rachel is telling Luke that June's been captured, but she's alive, last they heard. And she says they have 3 solid sources, but unfortunately she doesn't think they'll get much more information.
So like, who are the sources?
Obviously, yeah.
I was like, it's got to be Nick, right?
Well, and he's not going to see her again until this is all said and done. So that would make sense that he couldn't get more information. I would like, yes, it's got to be Nick. I hope that is revealed.
Yeah, I mean, maybe he gave the message through the channels.
So
Luke is asking if there's going to be like a trial,
right? Because Luke doesn't get Gilead, and he's like, when's the sentencing? And she says like, her phone rings, and he gets snarky and asks if she has somewhere else to be, and she apologizes and says there's just not much else we can do. And when he thanks her, he calls her Rach. So I guess they're closer than I realized. And on her way out, she tells him that her grandmother used to bury a persimmon in the backyard for good luck, and then she leaves. And Luke just shakes his head.
I do want to give him like the benefit of the doubt, because like, we've even known that like Gilead is kind of like a black hole or black box of information.
Black box, yeah.
So like I get that like he doesn't know like what their justice system looks like.
Yes.
Right.
So like I don't blame him for asking like, oh, is there going to be a trial?
He's worried. I mean,
and he is.
Sure.
I think it's hard as a viewer too, because we're obviously seeing everything from June's perspective. So you forget that Luke doesn't know one thing that she knows because he hasn't been there with her for 1 second of it. So
I think that's an ongoing struggle that I have too, is that how much we know about what she's gone through and how little that he does. Which needs to be accounted for.
At the same time, he's also been around Moira a lot. He's been around people who have been in Gilead. He's been around refugees. So I think there are ways he could learn these things as well. And so maybe he could, by this point in time, it's been 7 years or whatever, he could have like some understanding of the fact that there is no justice, that it's usually straight to execution and it's not handled fairly.
I mean, we only know that Emily was one of the people that actually received a verdict without having a trial.
True, yeah.
So maybe she didn't really tell because she has so many issues with telling what really happened to her.
I can't see her telling Luke anything about that.
That's probably the case for a lot of refugees, honestly.
Yeah, probably. So it's hard to get through to that point.
And sadly, a lot of people who've gone through that process did not live to tell the tales. So
exactly.
That too.
I did appreciate that he was more upset this time than like when the Rachel and Leah bombing happened, and he was like, I'm gonna go get lunch. And that kind of bothered me a little. So obviously this is a more serious situation focused solely on June, but I did appreciate that.
I think that if he has any room to just pretend like she wasn't there, or just think like, oh, maybe she wasn't there, but if it's like directly like, oh no, this happened to June, then that becomes really, really real for him. Whereas like this happened to some handmaids in Boston, then he can allow himself to think that she wouldn't have been there, which makes sense. He's trying to just like get through his day, and so he has to.
And also there's a very interesting cutscene. I haven't seen the script for this scene, but there was supposed to be a scene, I believe, where he went to Fred and asked him to give him advice on how to get June to talk or somehow out of that situation, which would be an interesting scene to see.
Luke said went to Fred.
I think so, yeah.
Oh,
I'm glad they cut it, but
Yeah.
were it filmed, I'd be interested in seeing it. I think he said it was filmed. You think he said it was like a really great scene on his part?
huh.
Maybe when the whole show is over, they'll give us all of the deleted content.
Oh, that would
Please,
be amazing.
please.
Please,
That'd be great.
We would
The only
all
other-
pay handsomely for it, just so everyone knows who's listening.
The only other thing I was going to say about the Luke and Rachel scene is, I think Rachel is also trying to be tactful with him because this is highly emotional for him, and I think she's trying to give him hope a little bit. But the best way that she can put it, because I think she knows the reality of the situation in Gilead,
Right.
is to say we probably will never know.
Yeah.
Which is very ominous, but it's without actually saying going into graphic detail about what might happen to his wife.
Yeah. Then they bring June out of the waterboarding. She's gasping for breath, and Lydia comes in. She tells June that the lieutenant is dangerous and determined. Things are going to get a lot worse for her if she doesn't tell him what he wants to know and bring the women home. And then she does her shaming thing of Robert, of Eric, of Howard, and the others, all wanted fugitives in grave danger because of you. Bring them home. And June replies, this isn't their home. And Lydia says, because you corrupted them. They had a purpose here. And then June goes on the attack and she says, there's no meaning in this place except for violence. You told those girls if they followed the rules, they'd be okay. Then you sent them out to be raped and beaten and humiliated over and over again. You failed them. And that infuriates Lydia. So she's yelling, shut your mouth. And she pushes her off the chair. But June, seeing her success in getting to her, repeats it over and over. You failed your precious girls. It is your fault, Aunt Lydia. Your fault, your fault, your fault. Just like the shame circles Lydia used to force them to do.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed it.
That's my favorite dialogue flip, I think, where somebody uses their own words against them. Like, that's just the best. It's so impactful in that scene because you can tell Lydia is kind of affected by it.
Oh,
she's like, stop. Like, she's trying to leave the room. She's like, I can't to do this.
I can't get away.
Yeah. And she knows what she's doing because she did it to her. So it's just, I love it. It's so
and then
good.
June calls her Lydia instead of
Lydia.
She seemed to
Just,
like,
excuse me, what did you call
I like that we get to see like Lydia's like weak spot too is the handmaids, June's weak spot is Hannah, but Lydia's is the handmaids.
And specifically Janine. So June narrows in on Janine after that and says she was, your Janine, your girl. She was so easy. She turned on you in a fucking second. And she just knows how to hurt hers.
Well, and I think it's also because this is the scene where she pushes her off the chair and says, shut your mouth, after she says, you failed them. And I think it's also because she knows June's right. I mean, she knows that I think that's one of the things she's already been feeling herself, is she failed her job, or she failed as the aunt or whatever. So she's saying you failed them, and it's something that I think Lydia has already been thinking about herself. And we've seen her lash out anytime she feels embarrassed or anytime that she feels like someone is calling her out in that way.
Yep.
I like when June gets into her manipulation mode. She gets this kind of devious smile on her face. And it reminded me of when she slapped Fred. She kind of had that same look on her face.
Yeah.
She gets really creepy sometimes.
I enjoy it.
Like maniacal almost.
Yeah. So Lydia's happy now when Lieutenant Psychopath walks and the eyes come in, saying, well, good, it's only through true suffering of the flesh that we shall find his love. And Psycho has his tool ready to tear off her fingernails. And this time when he says, you can stop this anytime, she breaks and she tells them where they are, a library in Vermont at Burlington. And he immediately stops and cheerfully says, let's go get you some dry clothes and a place to stay. And she's lying, of course. I just noted that maybe she should have said a residence. That would be harder to find than a college to buy a little more time.
It was the nail pulling. I still had nightmares from the time that Emily lost her nail in the colony. So I was I was hiding my eyes. I was like, I can't watch this. Thankfully, she said something.
I know. We were spared that one.
But I actually loved Lydia's reaction because she was she was so pissed at June. She was like, "You deserve this. So if he takes your nail, it's all right." But then she couldn't even watch it herself because she like didn't really want to see June get hurt, even though she's like hella mad at her. So
it would be awful to watch.
She seemed shocked by June's confession. Like, she seemed skeptical, obviously. She's kind of like looking at her like with narrowed eyes, like, what are you up to? Like, what are you doing this time? But then also I just felt like she doesn't expect June to do that because she knows June.
Yeah.
So it just seemed, I was almost like, is she disappointed that June like gave in? Like, it's almost seemed like she was like, I don't know what to make of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just very un-June-like, I guess. But then we're with Luke on the patio, and Moira's getting ready to go to a march, and she says she'll wait for them. Luke's holding Holly, but Luke doesn't want to go. He says June's in prison and we're lighting candles, and Moira points out that's all they can do for her. And he finally tells her the real reason he's upset, or a big one at this moment. Did she choose this? He asks. And Moira's like, no. And he continues, because she chose to stay in Gilead and she knew she'd probably get caught. She knew she'd probably never see me again. She knew she'd probably never see either of us again. And that's a choice that she made, and I got to respect it. I got to respect her. I can't ask God for something that she didn't want. And Moira replied, God's been looking out for her so far. And Luke hurriedly escapes inside in tears, or about to be. But this conversation bothers me so much because he just completely dismisses Hannah. Obviously she stayed because your daughter, also your daughter, is still there. And how can he not see that?
I know. I had the same note.
Like, for clarification, when he said, did she choose this? Like, is he talking about when she stayed behind?
Yeah.
When Nicole got out?
Oh.
No, the plane.
I thought he meant Angel's flight.
She wasn't on the plane. Yeah.
Angel's flight. Okay.
Yeah, that's what I think he meant.
Probably. I mean, it would make more sense if he thinks that when Nicole got out.
Although he doesn't know. Well, maybe I guess Emily could have told him, but I was going to say he doesn't really know how that all went down.
Yeah.
As much as he would, the Angel's flight was like directly related to June.
Yeah.
So.
And
I bet he asked, and I bet she told him.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
But like, June didn't have a choice to leave with Angel's flight.
Exactly.
She like had to, do what she did so that they could get out.
Exactly. If she didn't go there and distract that guy, they wouldn't have gotten out. And I mean, the whole plan would have been gone.
I'd say it's both, though. I mean, I think it's both, and she has made this decision.
Yeah, she has, but it was for their girl. So,
like, the main person that you should be worried about in Gilead is actually Hannah, not June.
Yeah, I thought the line that I can't ask God for something she didn't want was kind of interesting, though. Just, I don't know, something about that made me think like he is thinking about, like, in a way, what does she really want? Which,
yeah,
I don't know. It was an interesting phrase there.
But I agree with Kate, because I feel like there could have at least been one line, like, I know she has to stay for Hannah, or,
right, of course. Yeah.
I figured she probably stayed for Hannah. I don't know. They're just the fact that he was focusing so much on him and Nicole instead of that also additional factor that didn't seem to enter into his.
Yeah, they could have worked something in, like you were saying, like, she and I could find Hannah from here, or just.
Right.
Sure. Yeah.
But I think he was just thinking about himself in that moment, I think
he was just having a self.
He is sad that his wife, chose to stay there and not try to get to him, which I understand. So
yeah, as like an isolated thing, obviously taking away all of the context of everything that's happening, I can understand why you would think that, and why like any person might think that in their head and just be like guilty or embarrassed about saying it out loud. But he's having like a vulnerable moment with Moira, so kind of just comes out.
He fears that ever since Emily came back and basically took her time, a long time, to call her wife, and he was like, what would June do? Would she not want to see me for the first days, weeks, whatever? And now he's like, she's basically doing it to him. It's like that feeling that she doesn't want to come back. But I mean, it's so hard.
It's not logical. It's just it's just the way he's feeling in the moment, I guess.
Yeah.
I did love one thing, such a random little thing, but when Holly sneezes, or Holly Nicole sneezes, and he's like, bless you, like that whole part, obviously wasn't scripted because you can't make a baby sneeze.
Right.
But I love that they left that in. It was like so
Mhm.
adorable,
Yeah,
and the way
it's
OT
cute.
reacted to the baby was so cute. Like
So
I love
natural.
that
It
little
was.
moment between them. Yeah, they
Yeah.
did a really good
I-
job of just like flowing with what naturally happened in the moment
Yeah.
with the
Right.
baby. I just love that.
I loved
And
it
they're
too.
cute. They're close, you know,
Yeah.
versus how
Mhm.
they started out. I like it. Then we're back with Lydia and June, and her misdirection has been discovered. And June tells her that she'll never tell them where they are, which Lydia finds to be a poor choice of Joseph, but just words. And
Oh.
Lydia can't see June at that moment, and June does look scared for what's next. And the next creative torture station involves riding an elevator with some cool
No.
horror movie-esque light flashing footage on the way up. And as she steps outside, it's raining and the music gets scary. I like how often they show us June's reaction to something before we see what that something is, like back at the Boston Globe.
Yeah.
And now, like then, she's horrified by whatever she's seeing. And then the camera swings around to show us Beth and Sienna on the edge of the roof. And then it shows us how far they have to fall, should they fall. And June just shakes her head rapidly. And Beth's trying to look stronger, like, you know, as Beth is wont to do. And Sienna looks like so scared and she's crying. There are helicopters above with spotlights on them, I assume just to produce more terror.
That was kind of how I felt about the lights in the elevator too. Like it almost seems
Yeah.
like when June was first walking into the I compound, did you guys notice that there were like two guys in a room with lights just like
Yeah.
flashing on them?
Yeah.
So I'm almost thinking like
Yeah.
it's like a light, it's like light torture,
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
torturing them with the
Sensory.
lights. Yeah, sensory
Mhm.
torture.
It's like
Mhm.
I always go to these like haunted, I don't know, prisons and things at Halloween.
Oh.
Yeah,
Oh,
yeah, yeah.
cool.
Like rooms
Yeah.
like that are like purposefully.
Yeah.
Also, really quick before we move on to the next part, when June walks onto the roof, were you guys thinking about 104? Like when she walks out into the rain and it's like her first breath of fresh air. There's like a
Good.
second
Yeah.
when she
Oh,
walks
little,
out and she's like,
yeah.
oh, and just for a second before she like comprehends what's going on, she kind of
Oh,
looks up.
really?
Yeah, it's the
Ah,
same
yeah.
as 104, and it's the same as in the
And
hospital scene with Natalie when
hospital,
she
yeah.
first walks out. Yeah, it
Yeah.
kind of
Yeah.
it's her
Oh.
thing.
Ah.
She needs some
She
fresh
likes
air.
the rain.
Yeah, she likes her rain.
Yeah.
So a psychopath quotes, "Thou shalt not steal, nor cheat, nor lie, for I am the Lord thy God." Wow, what a crazy night, huh? Insert casual psycho laugh. Now where are the handmaids? But I just thought that what a crazy night was like, God, he's so good at this role, right?
So
Yeah.
good.
Mhm.
And Beth calls out to her, June, don't tell them anything. So he walks directly to Beth and pushes her off the roof, does not even hesitate. And we hear her scream
Oh.
as she descends. And June falls to her knees, horrified. He walks to her, puts his arm around her, says, "You can save her," and walks June to Sienna. And they're holding hands. And Sienna's crying and they touch foreheads and June keeps nodding at her. And Sienna says June. And I'm quite confused why he didn't let that moment play out instead of just suddenly pushing her.
Same.
And but then he says, "Please don't lie to me again." And so then it makes a little more sense.
Mhm.
I guess he was always going to punish. I
Oh,
guess
yeah.
he was always going to push
Mhm.
both of them as her
Yeah.
punishment.
Right.
for lying.
Mhm.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's a good point.
But
Yeah.
still, she might have said, she might have told him then. If
No,
Sienna
I
had
was
begged
wondering
wondering
her.
that
Save
too.
Sienna.
Do you think that June was nodding to Sienna because she was going to tell her,
No.
or
No.
do you think she was
I
she's
actually
just
don't
nodding
think
to
so.
I
like,
think she was.
It's like her bridge.
They were like confirming, like
It's like her be strong, like bridge thing.
Yeah.
exactly, like
Yeah.
I know this is going to happen, and like
Yeah.
I'm
It's
here with
terrible.
you, and I'm sorry,
Yeah.
and that kind of thing was being conveyed. I think.
I mean,
Yeah.
if she would have told the handmaids, it would have been Beth would have gone in vain.
Right. Yeah.
I get what you're saying. Yeah. Like if I was in June's shoes, I'm sure it was a hard decision, but having somebody like directly in front of you, knowing that
yeah.
like
Yeah.
you're
I
responsible
know.
for their death, like
And you're
I don't know.
choosing these people over this people. Like,
Yeah.
you're friends
Yeah,
with these two
exactly.
people.
Mhm.
Like
I guess the thought could be though, if the handmaids are captured, because Jen didn't know if they were going to kill them when they captured them.
Yeah.
So she
Yeah,
might, because at the
exactly.
end she kind of acts like she's not sure if they're going to just go ahead and kill them.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
I feel like she's doing, well, these two will die, but then the other 6 will live.
Yeah.
Versus,
Mhm.
maybe all 8 of them dying because they're already here and they're probably going to kill them
Yeah.
anyway. So I think
Yeah,
but
and
yeah,
that's
obviously
back.
that's like incredibly difficult, and probably in June's position after going through season 3 and after like doing participants for the last however many years, like
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
it's a little different because you're like weighing your options in like a different way that we probably can't really even
Yeah.
begin to relate to.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
the Marthas are so expendable to Gilead, so she knows that there is no way that they will survive this after helping with
Right.
Angel's
Yeah.
flight anyway. So
do you guys think they were already at the prison, like being held prisoner at that point,
Yeah.
and they just brought them up
Yeah.
from wherever they were being held? Yeah.
yeah,
I do.
They
But
put-
it hurts my soul that Nick couldn't save Beth or
yeah.
Yeah, he probably didn't know
I hate
about it
that.
until it was after it already happened, I'm sure.
right. That's how I think of it.
Oh, I would have loved Beth in Canada though.
Yes.
I know.
But it was a true way for her to go. I mean,
Yeah.
all the resistance stuff that she did from the beginning, and I mean, it was small things first, and June lit a fire in her to do more apparently as well.
Such a badass character.
She is, and that's I kind of expected her to
Mhm.
actually step off the roof, but she hardly
Oh,
had a
man.
chance anyway.
Wow.
Wow.
That would have been interesting, yeah. But I mean, she basically
practically-
did.
She said, "Don't talk." Yeah,
Right. She did it with her words for sure. Yeah.
let him push me. Okay, then we leave that scene, and the elevator opens again, and whatever June sees, she immediately starts protesting. Then we see like the torture box, so she gets locked in this small metal box with holes, and the scene ends with her banging on the box from the inside, which I actually don't think she would bother with at this point, or I don't think I would, but
Maybe she's just testing the locks. Let's make sure before we
Yes.
commit.
I mean, if she just walks out of that place.
I mean, I really have a lot of struggle with small space
Yeah.
and stuff like that. So maybe she really couldn't
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
deal with
Could
that.
just be the worst for her.
Yeah.
But then we're in Lawrence's living room, and the scene opens with Nick's hand on his neck because Lizzie's directing. And Lawrence and Nick are clearly talking about June, as Lawrence admits she's not stupid, but she is stubborn, which is a form of stupidity. As he sits down in his armchair next to Nick, he gives Nick a glass of liquor of one sort or another, but Nick never drinks, including
He
here.
does not.
Perhaps because of his brother's alcoholism, or more likely because you just can't let your guard down in Gilead, or both combo.
Or just because they didn't show it in the
Show
shot.
it?
But yeah.
So he is
It
drinking,
could, it
yeah.
could have been
I
that.
don't think
Actually, that's more realistic.
We should clarify what we're talking about with the brother, like
That's true.
just
Good
in
point.
case people don't remember that, like it's Nick's brother, Joshua, was an alcoholic, and that was brought up in episode 8 of season 1. Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
With the Price flashback.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there was a line cut out also that he drank himself to death.
Yeah.
That's
So
true.
I don't know if that means he didn't drink himself to death or what, but definitely an alcoholic. And that was a big problem in Nick's life. So, okay. Nick's trying to get Lawrence to help, and he says, "Here's the thing you owe me." And "you owe me" is exactly what June said to Lawrence towards the end of season 3 in this very same house. So I think it's a very cool callback
So
and
cool.
a kind of cool power couple moment for
Mhm.
Nick and June with Lawrence.
Yeah.
Yes.
So if he doesn't have any power, then why does he even bother going to Lawrence? Because He's-
they listen to Lawrence.
Because Lawrence does.
Yeah.
Yeah, he was desperate. So
Oh, well, I mean, Lawrence is just, I know he has basically less power now. I get what you're saying
Mhm.
because he just got reinstated. But
she's his handmaid,
And, oh yeah, and she's his handmaid. Good point.
so he knows
That's
her. And
true,
he-
yeah.
They would probably use his knowledge of her.
yeah,
I think Nick just generally knew that, like, wow, she's been in there a long time. She's not saying anything. Clearly, they're still torturing her.
It's
Like,
escalating.
what's the
yeah.
next thing I can
Yeah.
do? Like, I can go to Lawrence. That's the only person that I can trust with this. So, like, I'm going to go to Lawrence and ask what he can do. And
Mhm.
because he already like,
Owes
did him a
me.
favor, he owes him. Yeah.
Yeah.
So he knew that, like, Lawrence was in the best position to do something.
hmm
Yeah.
Imagine it like if you're like a cop and you get handed a file and you have to go out and capture a prisoner, and then you bring them in. You're going to be the one to
Mhm.
bring them in, but like
after that,
some higher up chief or something is the one that's going to take care of the rest of it. He's just like the dude that went out on the streets and got the person and brought them
Yeah.
back.
he isn't the one in the prison making the decisions about what happens in there. He's just the guy
Mhm.
getting the people to the prison there.
Right.
I know he's an eye, but that doesn't change that. The torture compound is a completely separate unit thing. Like
Mhm.
it's a prison. So the
Mhm.
prison guards and their prison, the head of the
Mhm.
prison and people like that, and there's a whole system going on.
Right.
If you need more evidence, Max, you saw the interview where Max is like, "What?
Shocked,
No, of
yeah.
course he didn't do that. That's
Yeah.
counterproductive to
Mhm.
whatever."
He didn't
So if he
know.
was in charge, he wouldn't have used Lawrence's idea to do that.
yeah,
Like,
No.
Yeah.
Max is telling us Nick had nothing to do with making these decisions.
Any of it. And I don't think he even knew what Lawrence did until it was already done either.
yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
Because that would have been
He
too
just told
upsetting.
Lawrence,
Agree.
get her to talk. He went to the council. Yeah.
Do whatever you need to do. Like, just make it happen. And then Lawrence did
Don't
it.
tell
And
me
then
what it
Nick
is.
found out about it. Right.
I think that they truly, that he truly knew that people would listen to Lawrence if he goes like, she's my handmaid and I know stuff about her. So if you do that, maybe she breaks.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's just going to repeat probably for the billionth time that he feels a little like a father-in-law figure after he clocked their relationship in 303. And then also Lawrence invoked Nick's feelings for June to save his life in the beginning of season 4.
Mm-hmm.
And so Lawrence says, you can't save her. You understand that, right? And if that wasn't enough, he continues, she's never coming back to you. Why would she? And Nick agrees. He says, I know. I just, I want her to stay alive.
My favorite line of Lawrence is when he says, yeah, well, it's always nice to want things.
Oh, yeah.
And then he said, you used to want things too. You wanted things to change. June did that. She changed Gilead. And Lawrence, Gilead was ripe for an overhaul. Now he says, she changed me. She changed you. So perhaps she's filled her purpose and it's time to move on, Lawrence replies. Nick looks into the fire and he shakes his head slightly and says, I can't move on. Does this shaky inhale thing. I can't.
Such incredible delivery. And
it's so vulnerable of Nick. Nick's never been this vulnerable to anybody else.
Yeah, true.
That's
true.
And that's huge.
Probably June, but yeah, nobody else.
Yeah, I mean, definitely to June, but he's admitting a lot.
He's had nobody else he can talk to about this either.
Right.
There's been nobody else he could ever talk openly about how he feels about June.
Yeah.
I'm still very surprised at the choice he made here to be that honest.
I mean, I guess he just couldn't help it.
And then Lawrence said I know. And he said it so softly. And
that moment killed me too. Yeah.
Very sweet.
I had that note too. Because obviously I think he relates to how Nick's feeling because of Eleanor.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
He does his little stressed blink thing before he says the I know too.
Yeah.
Just like a hard blink and then I know. So good. This scene is really epic, you guys.
I wonder if Bradley knows that he does that. I assume he does. But
yeah.
He does it later too with June at the later scene.
Yeah, I think that Lawrence really gets it, that they're really in love, not just casually a fling or something like that, but he truly clocked that they both are deeply in love, like him and Eleanor. So he really gets it.
I think Lawrence kind of knew that. I don't think he was I don't think he was testing Nick when he said perhaps she's filled her purpose. I think he just kind of wanted to hear it out loud from him in a way. I don't know.
Yeah. He wanted to see how far
probably to see, but also maybe to just find some way to encourage him because he doesn't think they can do anything about it. So it's at that point he just wants him to
move
not
on.
to not feel the way Lawrence knows it feels to be in that position.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, so appealing to Lawrence's soft side for June hasn't worked. Time to switch tactics. And so Nick shifts to a new strategy. And it's kind of like the opposite direction of Lawrence's persuasion of Nick in episode 1. June's not working here, so he appeals to his affinity for his home, his comfort zone. You're getting very comfortable here in this house. What are you saying? You owe me. You already said that. And I love the Nick side eye as he says, bears repeating, as he picks up the glass of liquor he doesn't drink. And also I love Lawrence's look at him as he's recalibrating his understanding of Nick. So add this whole new, he's threatening me.
He's like, oh wait, this is going both ways now. I'm being manipulated too.
Bears repeating is one of my favorite Nick lines, how he says it.
He shifts from the emotional side and hanging in his feelings, and then he's all cold and you owe me. Come on.
Yeah. I'll fuck you over if you
It
don't.
reminded me of how June is too. Sometimes she would use the more emotional tactic.
Totally.
And she would do something more practical.
Yep.
So
they're the same.
Good scene.
They have the same soul.
Yeah.
Great episode, Bruce and Lizzie.
Yeah.
And Max and all the other people involved, which are
I also like that there's foreshadowing too of Lawrence saying that she's never coming back to him, and then later in the
yes
yes, that's huge to me. I was going to talk about it in the deep dive, but you're right, it's in this episode.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's fine.
in this
I
episode.
just love that in the exact same she comes right back to him. Literally walks away and then runs back to him. So it's I love that.
I had another question about the way that Nick is manipulating Lawrence now about possibly losing his house. because the way he was saying it, it could help you too, getting June to talk. It could help you stay in this house. Does that mean that losing his house was already possibly something that was about to happen, and this is a way that Nick can keep him in his house, or is he threatening to kick him out of his house if he doesn't help him?
I think that when he's saying like he's getting comfortable, I think he also just means like complacent again. Like he's just sort of like he started to just chill there now. And like I think no matter what, if he's not providing what Gilead wants him to, he's on thin ice because of what's already happened. So he has to do something to maintain his status or maintain like his home and his life the way that he wants it to be. One mistake and they could kill him or put him back in jail or whatever else. So jail's a joke in Gilead, but I think it's just that. I think it's like Nick is leaning on the fact that he knows that Lawrence like could be removed from this position easily if he doesn't give something or do something to help.
Okay, that makes sense.
I mean, he got him in, right? He got him back in. So he probably can push a few buttons to maybe get him out again.
Yeah,
maybe.
I mean, I think it's kind of an empty threat at the moment, but he would do something to him if he doesn't know.
He could report whatever. I mean, he's an eye.
Figure
he could report
something.
Yeah.
Then we hear June singing Heaven is a Place on Earth again. So we know she's losing hope, stuck in an unending hell, basically. So it's an interesting choice for a song. But we spent a whole episode with her singing this song in season 3, and we know she's near her breaking point. Just going through the lyrics a little bit here. Oh, baby, do you know that's worth? Oh, heaven is the place on her earth. They say in heaven, love comes first. And that's what Nick's doing. In the previous scene, he's telling Lawrence like all he cares about is June. So it's interesting to me they go from that scene to this. And also because the fire in Lawrence's house almost feels like a hellish scene, but in reality, they're both thinking about love in that scene. And then we'll make heaven a place on earth. When the night falls down, I wait for you to come around. And that also makes me think of Nick and June and Gilead meeting in his apartment after dark. And when the world's alive and the sound of kids on the street outside. And then we cut to Luke and Holly, and Luke's super sad. Holly's on his lap and he picks her up and says, Mommy needs some good luck. This is a persimmon. You want to hold that? And she says, yeah. And Luke digs a very shallow hole for this persimmon. I did not look further into this, but I question if that is a deep enough hole for persimmon growing. It's so annoying how far I have to dig.
Persimmon magic
for other flower bulbs. Yes, magic, no less. And he takes her in and washes her hand and calls her a good girl, which is unfortunately a common Gilead saying, but also a common everywhere saying, so that is not a Luke diss. And he struggles a bit to get up, which I understand, sadly, because I'm getting old. But it leads well into the next scene when June's trying to get out of the torture box slowly because she does very good reason for her body not working.
How long do you guys think she was in there?
I don't know, overnight, I guess was my feeling. But quickly though, on the Luke scene, I think that he was sweet with Holly at the forehead touch.
Yeah, it's a very sweet scene.
Yes.
Yeah,
he is good with the kids for sure.
Yeah, but in the box, I don't know. Like, what do you guys think?
Yeah, probably a day, 24 hours. I don't know.
Yeah.
Awful.
Do we have any signs of passage of time in this episode?
No, because we're like,
no, it doesn't seem like it.
That's probably deliberate, though. That's probably deliberate because she's probably lost track of time as well.
Disoriented and
adds to the
Exactly.
I like that they have June in a box in this episode, and then later Hannah in a box, and the box is like, to me, like they both represent like they're stuck in Gilead, but June's box is like completely different than Hannah's. It's small, it's metal, whereas Hannah's is large and clear.
Oh, that's a good point.
I liked that like contrast with her and Hannah in the box.
Yeah, that's a good point. I like that.
It's like a microcosm of their reality. Yeah, Hannah's is kind of okay right now, right? It's not quite as dangerous. So June's crawling out of the torture box and collapses on the ground, all like slowly, and the door opens and red lights are on her face until the bag is taken off of her face and she's at a fancy dinner table with Lawrence in a cavernous room. His presence seems to both confuse and maybe calm her a little bit. He's a friendly face, and the circular lights on the ceiling to me were just reminiscent of the circles in the torture box she just crawled out of. So, she's still actively being tortured.
Yeah.
Even though she's at this feast and he says, hi, you look better. You should eat. No one's going to hurt you. Go ahead, eat. And he's just being Lawrence. But
it's just a feast for him, right? She only gets like
the soup.
A soup. And he's sitting there with all the good food.
Oh, really? No, I didn't notice that.
And wine.
Yeah, I know he had wine and she didn't.
That's
Yeah.
interesting because I was thinking like it reminded me so much of I can't think of a specific example, but you know that kind of trope or whatever in like kind of fairy tales where you walk in and there's like a huge
Long
feast, but
table.
yeah, and you're like supposed to. It's like tempting you to try to eat it, and then it's cursed. Like that's what I kept thinking of in that scene.
Yeah.
Good analogy.
It reminds me of a Dickens novel. Like the first thing I thought of when I first watched the episode was the in A Christmas Carol. I think it's the Ghost of Christmas Present. It's usually seen with like a bunch of food or like, you know, gifts around them, and it just had that image to me of like all of this abundance of food and a candelabra, and it was very elaborate. But her side of the table is just, you know, water and a bowl of soup.
Yeah.
And just showing their power again, right? And it's just showing like, here's all the stuff we have, and we can do whatever we want.
Why is her spoon so big? Did you guys notice how big her
I
spoon
thought, okay, I don't think it was soup. I thought it was Jello. That was
Really?
I thought it was tomato soup. Interesting.
I don't know.
I mean-
maybe.
I mean, Jello would probably be better for what she's been going through. I imagine her stomach would be.
It didn't look like good soup. It looked kind of
No,
congealed.
it's just a
I don't know.
plain.
It
Yeah.
looked kind of like pinkish to me. That's why I thought it was Jello.
I need to look at it.
That's so funny, Kate, saying about the stomach. I literally thought it was tomato soup, and I was like, that would go down really harsh right now.
Yeah.
Jello is a much nicer sounding. But anyway, yes, comically giant spoon, and Lawrence is sipping his red wine, and after one bite, June says, I didn't think he'd end up back here, and he replies that they need him, especially now. 9 commanders in the hospital, 6 dead. Some bad liquor at a Jezebel's in Pennsylvania. And June dryly replies, bad luck.
It's another reference to how they got on the council, like because of Lawrence and Nick both being on there, and he basically like explains that right there.
She
Yeah,
killed the commanders. Right.
Yeah.
And he's giving her intel as well, kind of Nick style. Not as nice as Nick, but
yeah. They both are like freaking geniuses at that. Like at saying
Good at
things without saying anything.
transmitting.
Like you know what
Yeah.
they're talking about, and it's just like wow, nobody would know unless you knew. You know.
Yeah.
Like, what is that
And that
thing that
would
people say? Like if you know, you know. That's what this is.
No, but I don't know, like that's good news for her. At least she took a lot out with her, right? I'm sure she didn't have any idea how successful that campaign
Right.
was otherwise.
It's kind of like a secret job well done, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So I liked that. And then he gets serious and says, June, you have to tell me where the handmaids are. And he repeats himself, and then he drops the bomb, or they will hurt Hannah. They will hurt her. And he's being uncharacteristically serious. But she takes it in, processes it, and rejects it. No, Gilead would never hurt a child. That's all they care about. But she says it like super vulnerably, like maybe she doesn't quite believe herself.
Yeah.
It's definitely not street. No way they wouldn't do that.
I think the whole thing too is interesting because you see how June not having comprehended that or not having taken that in that what Lawrence is saying is true, that they just want power and they don't care about the kids really. That is the whole reason that she was even able to be so strong, because she was like, they're never going to hurt Hannah, so I'll never give them up.
Yeah.
Like that's her only weak point. So she knows that like Gilead cares about kids. It's like strategic there because she's not going to say anything if they cut her legs off, you know, like she's only going to talk if they do something to Hannah. And she thought that was completely off the table. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so now that that's a threat, it's like her entire plan is gone.
Right. And I didn't say that whole line was Gilead doesn't care about children. They care about power. I thought you would have figured that out by now. And that's like obviously so relevant to present time. It gets to the root of Gilead and what we've always seen with like Serena abusing June when she's pregnant and how they treat handmaids when they're pregnant and everything. So I really, really like that line for both show and real life. I mean, I don't like it. I hate it, but
right.
I find
It's
it
relevant.
very relevant. Yeah.
I have a random aside question. What do you guys think June would have done if it was like Nick's gonna die if you don't do something?
Well, so when you just said that, I was thinking about that because you said her only weak point is Hannah, and I was like, I think you're probably right, but
I think she'd give away if it was Nick.
I don't know because he wouldn't want her to. I don't. Well, but he maybe would though because
he wants.
Well,
I know
he wants her
like
to survive. But
he wants her to survive. So
wait, this is horrible, you guys.
Yeah. It's like the one thing he wouldn't sacrifice himself for is if it would affect her if he died. I don't know. It's just like
Oh,
Yeah.
down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
Impossible to
true.
puzzle
I
out.
feel like
It's
we
crazy.
just uncovered like a crazy maze, you guys.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This is so interesting.
And
Huh.
I don't think she would let them kill him, probably.
I don't either,
Yeah.
but that would be hard to defend when Janine asks about it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Right.
Hannah's easier to understand with
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's just go with
It's
that
an
then, because I like that. She wouldn't let him die. Okay, we're
Interesting
good.
question.
Yeah.
And June says to Lawrence, I thought you were going to clean up your mess. And he points out he can't do that from the end of a rope.
This is where we are.
And she thinks, and then she replies, well, go fuck yourself. And he
And then
looks,
Lawrence does a stress blink.
Yeah.
yes, exactly. And he looks like seriously pained by her refusal. So we know something
Yeah.
bad is coming.
Mhm. When he said I can't do that from the end of the rope, that also made me think about Nick, because I feel like that's why he doesn't just leave, or why he can't show his hand, or why he has to be so careful, is because if he gets caught, he's useless to everybody. Like, he can't help June, and he can't help the resistance. He can't help if he's a commander, if he's also an eye, and he is also helping the resistance. He's in a very unique position to give them very important information, intel. He can help in a very specific way. And that I can't do that from the end of the rope just resonated with me for Nick as well.
Yeah, and the way he says afterwards, this is where we are. I'm like,
Yeah.
who's we, right?
Mhm.
And I mean, she is too, and he is, but Nick is too. They are all at a position right now. It's like if something just slightly goes sideways, they are going to die. So
Yeah.
On what you were saying, Rachel, Raquel actually sent me an essay Margaret Atwood wrote that talked in detail about basically the fact that, like, you have so much more power inside a bad organization than you do if you, obviously if you're dead, but also if you like escape to Canada or whatever, like, everybody is just like brutal to Nick because he's staying in Gilead, but it is literally the best way that he can help or create.
Absolutely.
Next, Lauren says, motherhood has always been an evolutionary puzzle to me. And June nods and chuckles softly because she's well aware of that already. But then he says, gentlemen, and the eyes come and grab her. And Lawrence blinks away tears, or blinks rapidly, possibly away tears, and says, I was hoping we could avoid this. And June's led into a dark room. She sees Aunt Lydia first, and the sorrow on Aunt Lydia's face and the hand on June's arm as she walks away tells us this must be really bad. And June seems to understand that too, just from looking at her. They've definitely done or are going to do something to Hannah. And as she slowly walks down the stairs, she smiles slightly. Even as she keeps approaching, I feel like she's smiling more. And we see Hannah in pink in a glass box. And June's just so happy to see her. It seems like she can't see past actually like seeing her daughter finally to thinking of the implications of her being in that box. But when Hannah turns to her and she scrambles away terrified, and June's devastated, and she tries to approach her again slowly, saying, it's okay, baby. But Hannah still looks terrified, and June looks scary. She's been tortured, she's dirty, she's in shackles, but she sits next to her and she just keeps repeating, it's okay, baby, over and over, and she drops her head crying. And of course the lieutenant enters the screen now, and she immediately tells him what he wants to know. They're at the Murrow farmhouse, 13 miles west of the Keys place. He tells her it was lovely to meet her, as if it really was. And he uses her full name, strangely enough, June Osborne. Thanks her for helping and leaves. And Aunt Lydia pulls June away from Hannah, repeating she's safe. And the camera just stays on like a terrified Hannah as June walks away.
This was the scene where I started crying and then didn't stop till the end of the episode. Pretty much.
So do we think that Hannah really doesn't remember her, or is just afraid of actually her?
I mean, I think she has to remember her because of how recently she saw her.
That's what I was
Had it not
thinking.
been for that, then I would say no, she doesn't.
Because later June says
May
she
not
doesn't
remember her.
know me, she doesn't remember me, but I think she knows her. But I also think that because of that last experience, and also because of what June's actions going to the school are what caused Hannah to be taken from her home and her school, her friends, and it's why her Martha died, and all of those things happened. And I'm sure Hannah's been told that over and over again. And so that's who June is now to her.
And
scary, crazy person in her mind now.
You can't blame her.
Yeah.
Right.
And additionally, she's dressing the part now.
Yeah.
In that outfit and being completely not
Mhm.
like your mom.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think any child would be convinced that she was bad at this point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But what June says later is also true. She doesn't know me because she doesn't know her.
Yeah.
She knows the
Yeah.
version that she's been told.
Interestingly, I think that what Nick says isn't true. Like, she loves you.
I mean,
I hope she does deeper down, but I
Yeah.
don't know.
I think that it's just like, I think knowing that Hannah doesn't know the truth is probably part of it, because she doesn't really know June, and she loves who June was. So
Right.
she would if she knew her, I think.
It's like when they meet at the lake house. I mean, it's still, there is so much happening in between, but back then she also looked like she was scared of her, and the whole time she was totally reserved until they had to split up, and Hannah was like, no, I love her, it's my mommy. And then I think it's always deep down in there, because June was just such a great mom. She was never a shitty mom or anything, so
It's still in there. I think that's what he means.
it's such a strong thing.
And Nick probably remembers that moment too, because he was there.
It affected him as well. We saw that.
Right. Clearly,
Yeah. Sorry, I just have to go back a bit to Lawrence and Lydia and how everyone reacted to this, because it's like no one wanted this to happen except probably for the Lieutenant Stans. But Lawrence clearly did not want her to go there. He really hoped that she would break at the implications of them hurting her.
Just the idea.
Yeah, and seeing him being a bit emotional about the fact that they would probably have to torture a child, especially June's, got to me. And then Aunt Lydia being so, I mean, this shows that Aunt Lydia basically didn't have much power in there too, because she's all for the kids. She's basically not like everybody else's. And she couldn't stop it. She was horrified. That showed me that she basically didn't have to do anything with that.
She didn't, but she also saw it was effective. Like, she also had that look on her face afterwards that this is what worked.
Yeah.
Then we're with the handmaids and we see lights, we hear cars, we hear dogs barking, and we know what June just told them. So dogs. Janine wakes up and looks out the window right before a flashlight shines through it, and she wakes the others. They huddle together, terrified, waiting. Then they hear gunshots. Probably the Murrows are likely being shot, and then footsteps approach, and Alma's the first to stand, then Janine, and then the others. They're not going to be taken like cowering. They hold hands, and I cry, and then the doors burst open and the flashlights blind them, and we know they've been captured. But I really loved that scene. I thought it was really beautiful the way they stood up together, like so brave and badass, even though they're clearly terrified. I found that really moving personally.
Yeah.
It's another one scene of the part where the handmaids just stick together, and we saw that a lot of times already, and it's always one of the most beautiful things when they are forming a unit and being strong with each other.
I did think it was weird that they just immediately, I mean, if they immediately killed the Murrows, which it seemed like, but like you would think they would want to make sure that they were there or figure out where they were before they killed them, unless they saw them through the window already, which is possible.
Yeah, that's a good point.
I wondered, because they let Esther live. I was like, why do they immediately shoot everybody up? It's like,
maybe the Murrows are older and Esther's young, so
I'm surprised they didn't keep them alive to question, honestly. Because if they have, like, if they were a safe house, maybe they housed other people previously.
Well, I'm secretly hoping that this is because of it was Nick that was in the other house, and he really doesn't want all the violence, so he tries to not do that and tries to do anything else before it. So but I mean, we don't know what his orders were, so
I think it's crazy that the handmaids did not move to a new location yet, because obviously June cannot get to them safely. Obviously she's being tortured. She's buying you time. Go somewhere. Don't wait for her. Like, she's being tortured. There's no outcome here where she escapes and finds you guys, and you guys all go off happily.
Yeah. Maybe they didn't have another safe house, though.
But there's also that,
because like June was the one that found out that there was another one. So
we said it before, we don't know how much time has passed, so maybe they had another safe house already but didn't want to leave without June.
Maybe.
Right. Then Lydia comes into June's cell and tells her the news, and Lydia's beaming, of course, and June just begs her to kill her. She doesn't want to live anymore. Lydia laughs and says, none of them will be killed. No handmaids can be spared, especially after all those children were lost thanks to you. No, instead you're going to a Magdalene colony. You will labor in the fields until your commander comes to rape you every month, and you will live out your days there. She admits she had her doubts about the breeding colony, as June puts it, but now she sees the value in it for people with certain temperaments and reminds June that all of this is her doing. Everything that has happened to her, to Hannah, to Janine, and the others, to those poor Marthas, all of it is your fault. You were responsible. Your choice. She's such a vicious bitch. Back to the shame circle.
She also said your choice, which was the same thing Luke said earlier. Did she choose this?
Oh.
She does make choices that hurt others, but it's not her fault.
I think we should all just have a moment of silence for Lizzie's acting in the scene, because I was like bawling. Like,
I know. It's incredible. Yeah. And I take her for granted. Like, we should be talking about her acting in every
for
scene,
the whole
but she's
thing.
so good. Like, yeah.
Not even like to mention, like, this is her first time directing an episode, and like,
it's incredible.
And
episode to direct.
It's incredible.
She is amazing.
Torture.
Yeah.
She's unbelievable.
Yeah.
So Lydia like definitely delights in hurting others. Not that we haven't established that 1 billion times over. Then June's naked, being hosed down like an animal, and she has so many wounds. And that's a good point, Violet, that I didn't notice in the same context. But yeah, the blood and the water coming out of the wounds is similar to that Bible story. And then she's being dressed again by Aunt Lydia in her handmaid gear, and her eyes look dead. Praise be, Lydia ends with and walks out.
Now I reminded myself of the fact that we talked a lot of June wanting to die, basically being on a suicide mission ever since somewhere along season 3.
Yeah.
And now she's like, okay, that's it. Yeah, right. Please
end the journey. Let's do it. Yeah.
I'm ready.
She took out quite a few people first.
Yeah. It's just making me sad.
It is so sad.
Yeah.
Now we get another aerial shot.
This episode has like 3 or 4 of them in there. Freaking gorgeous. Like, I love when they do the aerial shots of the cars or the trucks going down the road.
I feel like they do it every time there's driving. There's always an aerial shot of whatever vehicle, and it's always
if they're going
so gorgeous.
somewhere like important. Yeah.
They make excellent use of drones in this show from the outset, since 2016. Like, wow, incredible. It adds a lot. I really love these shots. Yeah, so we get the aerial shot of the Ivan. June's inside, neck's not shackled this time, only her hands, and the doors open, and she's walking forward on a path, and the music playing is way different than the music we've been having, and really nice. And she doesn't know what she's walking to yet, so she turns back to look at the eyes, and they tell her to keep walking. They're fully masked as well. And as she does, we see a figure on a bridge, and then we see from behind Nick's neck. And when June realizes it's Nick, she smiles and lowers her head and has this like sweet moment that, I don't know, to me, it's like, oh, of course he'd come. He'd arranged to come see me. And then she pauses and starts what looks very much like a bride walking down the aisle to Adam Taylor's beautiful composition. And when she finally reaches him, he's so sad. And he immediately tells her what's important to her first. Hannah's back home. She's safe. And then he tries to apologize for doing what he had to do to keep her alive. But she stops him. There's no time for that. And she knows that everything he does is to keep her alive. An important thing to quickly note here is Max confirmed in an interview that Nick had nothing to do with bringing Hannah in, and in fact was shocked anybody would think that Nick could ever do that to her. He just asked Lawrence to help him, and that was Lawrence's idea because he's much more pragmatic and willing to do what needs to be done, whereas Nick would never have made a choice that would hurt June or her child like that. But what June needs from Nick is therapy. He's the only person she can ever be vulnerable with, and she needs to tell him the worst part for her, which is, Hannah was scared of her. She wasn't scared of them. She was scared of me, and she starts to lose it. And Nick approaches her and puts his hand on her shoulder and his forehead on hers, pulls back and looks in her eyes and tells June to listen to him. She loves you. She loves you. I love you. And his hand is on the back of her neck. June listens and she calms down, and then the red van pulls up and they're both so sad, and it's the worst. They're just like touch foreheads. Nick clenches his jaw, and June starts doing her sad nodding thing and starts walking. But at the end of the bridge, she pauses, and then the music gets like bigger, and she starts to run back to him. And it's such a beautiful moment. Lizzie, I love it so much. When she reaches him, like she puts her shackled hands on her face and they kiss, and they smoosh their faces together as close as they literally can be. And they say their mutual I love yous, and they look so peaceful. And then they like kiss chastely once, and she smells him and kisses his forehead and walks away, rejuvenated and like ready to face what's next. And it's such a beautiful scene.
Yeah, this scene has like when June first gets there and she starts breaking down, and then he's trying to get her to like pay attention because he's trying to help her, but she's like crying. And then he says, listen to me. And then he says, hey, and it's really soft and really sweet. And I don't know how to even explain why it's so great, but it's like this little whispered like, hey. And she just like immediately looks up at him and opens her eyes like instantly when he says it.
Yeah.
Like he says, but listen to me. And she's still like breaking down. And then he's like, hey. And then she just looks at him and it's magic. It's magic.
I love when they do the hays, or maybe it's specifically Nick that does
It's mostly
it.
Nick who does hay, but yeah.
It's in 306 too. They did their hays.
High hay. They both do like a high hay
But
thing.
even like outside like that too, obviously, but like even outside of that, just I don't know, something about the like tone of his voice right there is like
But you're right.
But
like
she
he
listens.
says that. Yeah, he says
And she
that and
listens,
it grounds
yeah.
her. And that's what his effect always is on her. It grounds
that
her.
tiny little word and the way that she can feel his sincerity and feel like his love for her, and she just looks up at him, and it's like,
and she needs it. Like this is what she needs from him. She doesn't need his explanation and apology.
That's like unspoken. They don't.
Yeah, exactly. And I remember because, like we said earlier, this is the first time. Well, this is really now the first time they've had an opportunity to talk since I guess the snow kiss in 3-6. But after that was when everything happened, and she heard the thing from the Swiss, and then from Serena, and then it's been a long time. So the fact that after all that she isn't, and the fact on top of that he's just arrested her and brought her in to be tortured, and the fact that while all this was happening, this thing happened with Hannah. It was so important to me. I was so on edge in this when I was first watching this scene. Like, is she going to be mad at him? And like when she says stop, like no, I don't. I get it. You know, we're in Gilead. I get what I did. I get why you did what you did. I get the fact that I'm probably still alive because of you. I don't want to talk about that right now. Then he, sees what she needs, and he doesn't know if she's going to be able to accept him anymore, if she still loves him anymore. Is she going to hate him now? And so he's keeping his distance until it's clear she needs him, and she wants his comfort. So then he closes that distance, and that's when it goes from there. But yeah, exactly. As soon as he says, hey, that's it. That's what, like, her eyes are up and she's looking at him, and she's just pleading with him, like, yes, please make this okay. Yes.
Right. And like reminding her of the truth too, because she's just been in a brainwashing facility for the last however many days. Like he's the one that can remind her of like what's real. Like Lydia is sitting here saying this is all your fault, and Nick can be like, no, but like let's recalibrate everything back to what's real, and that's what they do for each other.
So he brings it back to love,
and especially since June was at that very low point where she was basically like, please kill me. I don't want to do this anymore. I just want it all to be over. And she gets this moment and draws so much strength from it. And then we know what happens afterwards. So she really got a big, big push out of that. And she, thankfully, because she really needed it. And it gave me so much hope for the rest of the season. And I really love that Nick was not able to separate himself from her again, because they were like listening to the car approaching, and he couldn't do it. He couldn't even watch her move away, and she was nodding and basically telling herself, okay, I need to go now, otherwise we will be killed.
I think somebody pointed out too, this is like very specific, but I think it was maybe Rachel, that when they say the I love yous to each other after the epic kiss, when he says it to her, her like ears perk up. Like you can like see it happen in the shot. It's pretty cool.
I don't think it was me. I don't think I can take credit for that, but I remember somebody saying that.
Somebody mentioned it, and I wish I could credit the right person, but I'm so sorry, whoever you are.
I also wanted to, Tina, back when this first aired, noticed how similar this kiss was, shot for shot, to the ending kiss of The Bodyguard.
Yeah.
And she created that amazing gift set, the side by side. And I when she said it, I remember thinking, oh yeah, they are similar. But when I saw her gift set side by side with every single clip, I was like, oh no, shot for shot, that is exactly the same as The Bodyguard kiss. It was incredible.
I loved that movie to death. I watched it as a teenager like 100 times. So I was seeing that and was like, oh my God, this is so epic.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
I've never seen that movie, you guys. I gotta go watch it.
Oh my
This
God,
is-
you have to.
You have
Yeah,
to.
that's
Yeah.
One of my
crazy.
mom's favorites. I always remember
Mhm.
that last scene. That's like the only thing I remember
Mhm.
of the movie.
It's
Yeah.
that
Same.
dynamic is a bit like Nick and June too. And
It
not
really
Nick-
is.
Yeah,
It's really
because she's
funny.
always
His-
pushing him and she's always
Uh-huh.
edging him on.
And he's so protective, and
Yeah.
it's a really good movie to watch with this relationship in mind.
Yeah.
So then we're back in the red handmaid van. Long time no see. And Janine's humming, looking a bit crazed. Alma looks at June, and I get the feeling they all blame her for giving them up from a couple looks. I don't know though. But every one of them would have done the same thing if it were their child. Did you get that feeling?
Kind of, and I hate that they don't get a chance to talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
I
saying?
mean-
Because I think they would completely understand, like,
Right.
but they must also know that it took a while because it was like a very long time before
She
they were
bought
caught.
them
So
time
she did her
to go
best. Yeah.
torture. Yeah.
Right.
Like she really did like more than you could ever expect of anybody, in my opinion.
Maybe it was more of a
Um,
conflicted look. Like I'm sure they're like, you know,
Yeah, they don't know. They
she
haven't had
did.
the
She gave us up,
conversation.
but we don't really know what
Yeah.
happened. Yeah.
Right.
Did you guys notice that Janine is humming I've been working on the railroad?
Yes, I
Oh
noticed
shit, I
this
didn't
time.
notice.
Yeah. I was like, what is she humming?
Oh my god, how do I not
I
notice
turn on
that?
the subtitles, and it says it, that Janine is humming I've been working on the
Oh
railroad.
my god.
This is crazy.
I was like, that's super
Yeah.
intentional.
It's foreshadowing.
I just remembered again that Burton said that Maddie loves to sing and everything. So
Yeah.
this was kind of
Yeah.
a cute.
She's got a great voice. She
Yeah.
sings
She's
so
got a
does.
beautiful voice. They should use it more. I know she did it in
Yeah.
the hospital too, but love her
And
voice.
with while breastfeeding.
Oh,
Yeah, when she had
not
the
in the
baby,
hospital?
when she
Oh,
had Charlotte.
I forgot that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that. They reach a train crossing, and the driver says that he's gotta go pee. And Fade Out by Radiohead is playing, so we know something exciting is about to go down. June looks at Lydia. Lydia smiles at her and says, "It's so wonderful being all together again, isn't it?" But she can tell something's going on as everybody's like looking at each other, and especially the way June's looking at her. And Alma is like screaming at June with her eyes to do something, and June finally does. She grabs Lydia's taser and nearly chokes her with it. She's about to hit Lydia with it as Alma is like screaming at her, "No, we can beat the train, dummy." And Lydia says, "Don't do it." And June finally drops the taser and starts running with the handmaids to beat the train. Janine's smiling. They all are. They're happy. They're running for their freedom. Lydia's running after them, and then the driver too. And he raises his gun and he shoots someone who I have not become particularly attached to. So I still had hope that all was going to be well. And then another, okay, that's okay. The four I care about are still running. And June and Janine clear the tracks easily. And then as Alma and Brianna are crossing, the train comes and they disappear. Like they really hit them with the fucking train.
Yeah.
I could not believe it when I watched it. Neither can June or Janine. They keep staring, horrified, until June snaps out of it and tells Janine they have to go. And finally they run. And I was just thinking, once again, Alma waiting for June is a bad decision. Like they should have been running that whole time.
Yeah.
She's standing there begging June to go, and then she would have made it.
So
Yeah.
it was Alma both times. Alma was the one who didn't want to leave
Shame,
because she
that's
was waiting
right.
for June, and then Alma was the one held up at the van
It's
waiting
her
for
fault.
June.
No, I love
Well,
her.
it's so
though.
sweet and complicated though, because it's like, yeah,
But
like,
it's
what
also
would you do? I
affection.
mean,
It's also her friend. It's also she's
right.
thinking about her.
It's kind of beautiful.
It's also us seeing that she forgave her for giving it. Like
Yeah.
you just said they didn't have that
Yeah.
conversation, but obviously they're okay. She still
Yeah,
loves her no
yeah.
matter what.
She was her right hand, basically. So
Yeah.
seeing her
Mhm.
go is especially hard.
Yeah.
Also, was Alma's last word dummy? Because I think it was.
Oh my god, I love that so much.
I would love it
I
if
know.
it was.
No, oh my god.
It's
I
very
never realized
appropriate.
that, and that's my favorite thing she says. Oh,
Yeah, it's really sweet.
I always think of you, Kate, when Alma says some snarky lines.
well, thank you. I like to
Debbie.
copy her as much as possible. I love her. That makes me happy, Violet. Thank you for telling me that.
I love the way they use the Radiohead song because the beat of the Radiohead song matches perfectly with the sound of the train that's approaching. And it's just, I just think it's brilliant. It just builds that tension and it builds the anticipation of what's about to happen and that click, 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 click. It's really amazing.
Yeah. I was wondering for a short moment if the other two maybe had the possibility to live because he shot them in the back and not in the head or something. But then when we saw June and Janine run and the train driving through, and then it pans out to Aunt Lydia, and you see one handmaid not moving on the ground, so she was probably that. And then Lydia tended to the first one, I think. At least she looked down, and I was like, is she possible still alive, or is she dead?
Are any of you Star Trek fans? I'm not really either, but I'm familiar with this particular trope where apparently, especially in the old Star Trek, if there was like a group of people going on a mission and one of them was wearing a red shirt, pretty much you knew that person was going to die, and it was usually someone you'd never seen before. Like they would have all these main cast members and then one person in a red shirt, and that person was probably going to be the one to die. So it became it became the red shirt thing became a thing where it's like, oh, the red shirt, he's going to die. But you can't do that with the Handmaid's Tale because everybody is wearing red. All the handmaids are wearing red.
And then episode ends with a flashback to the Red Center and a voiceover. We slept in what had once been the gymnasium. We learned to whisper in the semi-darkness. We learned to lip read. And they're reaching across their beds at the Red Center holding hands. It's so sweet. Alma and Brianna and Moira and June. And then she names them Sarah, Ellie, Brianna, Alma, Janine, Moira, June. That final shot is an aerial of the girls in their beds reaching to each other and holding hands. And the final music is beautiful, composition by Adam Taylor. And that incredible episode comes to an end. Okay, I think that's a wrap on our spoiler-free analysis of this episode. So if you're a long-time watcher, hang on for a few seconds, and then we will talk about our deep dive notes of this episode in the context of the show to date. All right, who's got notes?
So I just had one really small, tiny thing where Nick is on the bridge and June's walking away from him, and he's like watching her walk away, like the first time before she runs back to kiss him. He does this little thing with his lip where he kind of like pulls his lip in. He does the exact same thing in 409 when she's walking to the car and he's watching her walk away. It's almost like a little like resigned motion. I don't know how to explain it exactly, but
I look forward to going back and watching the specific June's walking away from me gesture.
Yes, it's like, it's literally for like a sad she's leaving and we're not going to see each other for a while gesture.
But I had the not that same note, but similar, because it was like the whole separation of them at the ending of both scenes in episode 3 and 9 is basically the same, because he's not looking at her. He has his eyes closed and his whole face pressed into hers because he can't physically separate himself from her.
When they have their foreheads together.
Yeah. And she can, and she's just like soaking it in, and then she's like, okay, I have to do this, and nodding, and then she leaves. It's always her.
On that same note, just the returning of, when Lawrence says she's never coming back to you. And repeatedly in this entire season, she comes back to him every chance she gets. And also, it was interesting contrast to when Luke and Fred were talking, and Fred tells Luke she's never coming back to you.
Or when it says,
and she and Luke argues like, yes, she's
coming back to me.
Right. It's just interesting the differences between Nick and Luke and expectations and whatnot.
And Fred even says like maybe like physically, but she's not going to be the same woman.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, and like that's such a good parallel, because when Lauren says it to Nick accepts it. Nick says, I know. But when Fred says it to Luke, he denies it, saying, no, she's coming back to me. And at that point in time, she had already sent him the tape where she told him about Nick.
Yeah.
He hasn't accepted that there's a possibility she might not actually come back to him.
It's also interesting on that note, because she definitely comes back to Luke a completely different person. But when she's reunited with Nick in 409, or every time she's reunited with him, like she's that same like soft person that she is around him, sort of like obviously she's changed a lot in her own life and her journey, but when she's with him, it doesn't seem like
she's really herself. She's her complete self when she's with Nick. And I think also, like, you see a lot in season 4 is her insecurity in her relationship with Luke. And she, like, there's always something she's holding back, or there's a version of herself she feels like she has to be when she's with Luke. But with Nick, she can relax because she knows he loves her unconditionally, and she can be any version of herself and he's going to love her. And there's just something so relaxing and comforting and secure in that, and it's beautiful.
With Luke, we see her even having to put her manipulating Gilead face on from time to time, and forcing herself to put on a fake behavior. And with Nick, I have never seen her do that even once.
Never.
Yes, there was no need. She knew exactly that no matter what she does, he will be there, he will love her. And even when she screams or hits at him or anything. And I mean, there was a whole episode dedicated to the fact that she was scared to come back and not be enough for Luke because she was so insecure ever since they started dating, basically.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Well, it's all because of how they started with Annie.
Yeah.
Because she's always been afraid in the back of her mind that she's going to do something, or she won't be enough, or something will happen and he will leave her.
Yeah.
The same way he left Annie.
Yeah. So I'm going back to the ending scene with all the girls in the red centers, and they told each other their names. Someone on Facebook told that the aerial shot showed all of the handmaids that held hands having the same fate later on. So Sarah and Ellie, the ones we didn't really get to know, were both shot and they were holding hands at the Red Center. And Brianna and Alma held hands, and then they had the train run over them. Moira and June held hands, and later on we see that June and Moira both have gone out to Canada. So they also share that. And Janine is the only one not holding hands with anybody, and she's the only one still going through all the horrors of Gilead in Gilead. And it's like, I saw that and it was like, this is so cool and so scary and so sad.
Yeah,
it is.
They showed details.
That's
incredible.
So that was actually posted on the Handmaid's Tale official fan group Facebook page by Danny Lovell. That's really a cool observation that I had not noticed at all before.
Yeah.
So
yeah, that was an amazing observation.
It's amazing.
So I put together a whole list of all of the potential wedding imagery.
Cool.
I very first was alerted to that final shot, or the bridge scene, looking a lot like a wedding, from my friend on Tumblr who goes by DCGal814, and I was blown away when I saw that. I was like, oh my God, you're so right. Oh my God, that looks exactly like a wedding. It looks like June's walking down the aisle to Nick. Oh my God. And so once that little nugget was in my head, then I went back and I did a rewatch. And when they're in the back of the truck at the beginning of the episode, and Nick is removing the shackles from her ankles, the shot focuses on Nick, and he's getting down on one knee and looking up at her. So if all you do is focus on the imagery and you take it out of total context of what's happening in the actual episode, the imagery looks like he's getting down on one knee, and it looks like a marriage proposal. And then I started to piece together other things in the episode that could also run parallel to other sort of traditional marriage or wedding imagery. So yeah, there was the scene with Nick and Lauren sitting by the fireside, and if all you look at is the imagery and you're not taking into account the context of the scene, it looks like Nick maybe going to June's guardian at the time. I don't know if asking for her hand is so much the idea, or if it's just the tradition of showing respect to the guardian or his intentions or whatever, but that's just kind of what that made me think of. And then again, when we were talking about June and Lawrence sitting across each other at this long table with this really elaborate feast, this spread, I remember being so taken by the spread. Like, I was like, wow, that is a lot of food. And there's this candelabra there, and it's in this, what looks like a gymnasium. So when I thought of that, I was like, well, that could be a parallel to like a feast or a reception. And when Aunt Lydia is helping June putting her handmaid's dress back on, was very reminiscent of like a mother helping their daughter dress for their wedding. So I don't know if any of that was intended. I don't know if that was Lizzie's vision or if I'm just reading
Wow,
into
that's
it.
so much.
But
Yeah.
it just especially just it all comes together when you see the imagery on the bridge. Just that I can't think that has to mean that has to
Right.
have been shot that way, intended to look that way. So
I really hadn't thought of the Lydia dressing one either.
Yeah,
Wow.
same.
That
that's
is
cool.
so much like Bride. Weird. I would like to speak to Lizzie about this one day.
Yeah,
I want to
I'm
know.
saying yes. I think she did that intentionally.
I mean, I feel like some of it at least had to have been. There's no way that's all
Yeah.
coincidence,
Right? It's too much of a
I
coincidence.
feel like this show is so intentional.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd like to know that one day. I'm glad you did that. That's interesting.
Maybe it's out there to subtly steer your minds to them being real love and things like that, because maybe people don't really clock the wedding imagery, but if you see it, you see it then. Also, if you know it, you see it.
Yeah, exactly.
I just had a note on the name of the episode. First of all, there's like a ton of crosses throughout the whole episode on the bridge, and just a lot of them, but across, being that across is simply two perpendicular lines, I don't know how many are actually intentional. Obviously there's also the train crossing, but then June crossing the bridge also feels very significant, as she's ultimately crossing out of her old life as a handmaid back into or heading to Chicago and ultimately Canada. And then there's the fact that it seems like the handmaids may feel like she double-crossed them by turning them in. Anyway, those were my thoughts.
That's another good,
I like that.
Double meaning.
I have one more about Nick and drinking, because I'm always when he has a drink in his hands, I mean, we never see him actually drink it. And I was in the first seasons, I was like thinking, yeah, no, I don't think he would actually drink it because of what happened to his brother and all the horror that came with that, even before Gilead for him. So, and I think he really doesn't want to lose control over the situation he's in. So he probably just needs a clear mind. So he maybe is a fake drinker. He just lets the others drink and he's like looking like he's doing it, but never.
Yeah, I think so.
But then in season 4, as I saw more and more of the episodes and Nick appearing more and more really fucked up and completely distraught, because most of the time he doesn't know where June is, if she gets out, if he had to bomb her to death. And I'm like, if he ever drank something, I think now it's the time that he would start, because he's under such stress, and I would not put it past him to start to pick up the habit that his brother had and his dad, basically.
Right.
Probably. I think, I mean,
yeah,
it sounded like that was the case.
Well, and Max had also made the comments about his appearance in 4-9, because he said he had wanted to appear like he was haggard, like he'd had a lot of stress or things had been rough for him. So it's possible that that's a vice that he's fallen into, because everything just keeps getting worse and worse for him in Gilead.
It had to be one too many. Now she's out and he's still there, and we know why he's still there, and he needs to be there to help, but now he's back in an unhealthy marriage probably, and doesn't want any of that, and he still has to keep going, and it must have worn him down so much.
I could see it. I could see him hitting like rock bottom in season 5. And that's part of it. I have just 2 notes for spoilerful. When Lawrence said that she's not stupid, but she's stubborn, it reminded me of 409, when, Nick referenced her being stubborn. And then also, so June was supposed to go to a Magdalene colony, also relating to 409. The Magdalene Academy is where her and Nick met up. So I like that it was like a parallel of that's where she was supposed to be. And then she meets him at this Magdalene
Oh,
Reformed
right.
Prostitute Academy.
I guess I'm the one who's going to bring up the season 4 finale if we haven't
Oh
already.
yeah, we haven't done
Oh,
that
oh my
yet.
god.
Good job, Rachel.
Well, seeing June shackled in the back of the van reminded me of when Fred is shackled in the back of the van. So
Of
satisfying
course.
seeing him shackled. Although I wish they'd
Yeah.
put a gag on Fred, that would have made it
Yeah.
perfect.
Yes.
But I'll take it because they had the same shot where the truck would stop abruptly and it would pull
The
on the
neck,
neck.
yeah.
And so
Yeah.
that happened to Fred too.
Yeah, it
It's-
annoyed me that he wasn't muzzled, except it is fun hearing him like cry out son and shit. Like
yeah.
Yeah.
no avail.
I think that I heard somewhere that they did like more of the masks in this episode. Like all the Guardians were wearing masks was because of COVID. So
Yeah, that's really
it's kind of
interesting.
cool how they incorporated it.
Yeah.
I like their real life solutions. Like Janine's eye patch was actually a good solution for
Yeah.
Maddie, and yeah, these masks are perfect for COVID.
Mm-hmm.
We kind of talked about it earlier with the Luke scene with Rachel tapping, where he's questioning, will there be a trial? What about a sentencing? But it reminded me of what he says later about Fred, that, he'll be sent back to Gilead and put on trial and thrown in jail. Like he, again, still just doesn't understand the way Gilead works and the system over there.
Yeah.
Oh, Kate, you've made this
Yes.
comment in the past about the way Nick is holding her neck on the bridge just before the handmaid van
yeah.
arrives is
True.
similar to when she's in the bathroom after she cuts her hair in the testimony episode, where she
Yes, good
she
point.
reaches around and puts her hand on her neck and sort of strokes her neck
Right
the
where
same way that Nick does. So
Nick
I love
was.
your observation, and I agree with you. I think she's thinking about Nick there.
I'm quite sure I saw it somewhere else first. So credit to whoever first noted it on Reddit or wherever. The only thing that I had in the preview, didn't he say some women don't want to be saved or something?
Oh
I think
yeah.
they cut that, and I was curious because
Now that you say, yeah,
yeah.
I think you're right.
Who was it who said that?
Lauren
Lawrence
said that
says
to
it.
Nick.
Yeah.
Oh.
Okay, I think that's a wrap on our analysis of season 4, episode 3. That was a long one. If you're still with us, thanks for listening, and come back on Monday for season 4, episode 4.
Bye.